concerned that the kids who have been told they're going to be home indefinitely won't be able to catch up.
On the ground.
Do you have faith that about change soon?
And in depth.
Here in Portland, more protests expected tonight.
Do you think that police in this country are under attack?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
The news business is dynamic and probably has never been more important. With all that we're facing,
dude,
I am so proud to bring the perspective of a black woman, a daughter of immigrants, the wife and mother of a husband and kids who sadly are more vulnerable to police violence because of their color.
Right now,
a proud nerd and a representative of the emerging America to cable TV news. I hope the great Gwen Ifill and my mom, Philomena Carolamina, will look down from heaven
on screen
and
just
be
to
proud.
confirm what's going on right now? I don't know if I'm on the right one.
Welcome back. As we head into tonight's debate, both candidates will be aiming their answers towards voters in battleground states where they're supposed to be.
Pretty much
but
the
there are new
debate,
signs of trouble for President Trump in
Yeah.
the two places that he
You're
won
on the
in
wrong
2016,
one,
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Just
two recent polls show Biden leading in Pennsylvania.
It's the
latest NBC News Marist poll
live
of Wisconsin
coverage,
shows
and it's the
Biden
one
now
with
leading
less
there by
views.
10 points. Trump holds the same level of support in our Michigan numbers. He's sitting there at 44, although Biden's numbers are slightly lower than that. He still holds an 8-point lead. Our own Dasha Burns is talking to voters in Kent County, Michigan for our County to County project about what they want to hear from the candidates tonight. So, Grand Rapids, what are you hearing, Dasha?
Fixed.
Well, Chuck, there are a couple things that are different on this first presidential debate night in Michigan than they have been in the past. The biggest change is that a lot of voters in this state actually have their ballots in hand right now. They became available to voters last week. And so for the last couple of days, we've spent time with Kent County Democrat organizers and Kent County Republican organizers and volunteers as they have been using this time as a really critical period of time to engage with voters and do that outreach just much earlier than they would normally do it, because people are going to be voting this week, Chuck, and the approaches are pretty different. One difference is the Republicans. Trump won this county in 2016, albeit by a narrow margin, but their chair, Joel Freeman, tells me they are trying to replicate that essentially in 2020. They're trying to hold on to that enthusiasm. In 2016, they had a lot of first-time voters come out for Trump, and he says they're coming back again. He actually told me that he doesn't see a huge difference between 2016 and 2020. Democrats, on the other hand, are trying to make the opposite thing happen this time around, and they're saying this election feels completely different from 2016. They're seeing a lot of brand new volunteers who have never been involved in politics before. In terms of what people actually want to hear, though, from these candidates, it's interesting, Chuck. It sounds like everyone wants to see their candidate be the best version of themselves, which means they want Trump to be Trump and Biden to be Biden. Take a listen to some of what I heard.
All right, this is okay. What the
fuck? I feel like one of the biggest things that really gets his base and just like
what are those headphones?
The common voter riled up is just how he
Not
is
good ones.
him, and he doesn't really have too much restraint. So just let Trump be Trump.
What I want to hear is Vice President Biden remain away from the personal attacks, which I think we know Trump is going to lob. Remain committed to his focus on his vision, on his plan, on what sets him apart.
He's got such a long head,
4 years
it's
of
kind of hard.
President Trump.
POV, you're in a white neighborhood.
Chuck, that second voter you just heard from, that's Mitch Monin, and he is actually a Republican. He's voted Republican in every election of his life, except in 2016 when he went third party. We actually met him at the Kent County Democrats office as he was picking up a Biden-Harris sign to put in his yard. And Chuck, I have to tell you, I have no stats, no great numbers on this, but every time I've been to the Kent County Democrats office, I have run into a Republican there. And Mitch is actually a veteran Army Ranger. He says he's frustrated with how Trump has handled military issues, and he's going to be interested to hear what they both have to say tonight. Cool? Chuck.
Well, Dasha, that's why we're in Kent County. It's why it's one of our counties. And if Biden has any plans on winning this election, he better hope more Republicans show up to the Democratic headquarters in Kent County. Anyway, Dasha Burns in Michigan for us.
Actually, you don't need to worry about Republicans showing up to win the vote, because there are far more Democratic voters in the U.S.
African-American voters are having their mail ballots rejected 4 times more frequently
registration
than white
of the Democratic
voters.
Party is
Morgan
far
Rafford
beyond
is in
the
North
RNC.
Carolina with more. And Morgan,
that's why they just tell people
the
to
first
vote.
2 days of early voting, we saw it was immediately 4% rejection rate, 1% among white voters. And the fact that it's still holding is pretty disturbing.
That's right, Chuck. And this is kind of where they're beginning to count those mail-in ballots. Because as you mentioned, today is the first day in North Carolina. North Carolina is one of the few states that begins to
What are you doing, Vice President?
This is the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. So Mecklenburg County, for example, holds Charlotte here in North Carolina. And they're actually having a voting right now where they're receiving 35,000 ballots that they're going to go through tonight before they open their next batch next Tuesday. But this is the issue at hand, Chuck. You mentioned the fact that state statistics show that among those mail-in ballots, black voters are seeing their ballots rejected or returned for inconsistencies at 4 times the rate of white voters. And when we talk to the State Board of Elections, County Board of Elections, both in Monroe and Union County and here in Mecklenburg County, they all can't give an answer as to why that discrepancy exists, but they say that the inconsistencies they're seeing that's causing them to send those ballot faxes back are things like this. For example, this is a mail-in ballot. You might not have a voter signature.
Thank you so much for showing us.
The signature of a witness, which is required by law in North Carolina. We talked
this is a
to
ballot
one of those
user.
voters, a 70-year-old black man, who said that he didn't even know that his ballot had, in fact, been rejected until we called him. Take a listen to what he had to say.
All right.
So you decided you were going to vote no matter what.
I love black people.
If I had to crawl.
Dude, is that
amazing?
Amazing.
Black voters are having their mail-in ballots rejected at 4 times.
That might be a Jesse Lee Peterson shirt.
I love black people.
I love black people.
Well, you know, it's funny how that works out. You know,
Dude, everyone is using disposable
all this time it took us to get the
yourself
vote.
someone who loves you.
You
to
would
make
think
you
that we would still be able, but we still seem to be fighting.
Or show your
someone to
money
sit on
in
your
a bullshit
face.
mask.
Thighs are
No horny during the debate.
I'm sorry, he's not on stream yet. Trump hasn't absorbed all my hormones and fucking killed them yet.
Perhaps the fact that a lot of African American voters in North Carolina are typically used to voting early and in person. So many of them are voting for the first time via mail-in ballot, and they think that could be the mistake. But the reality of it is, State Board of Election officials, they are upset that there are these calls, this racial discrepancy exists. But the reality of it is, those numbers do exist, and that impact is real for the people that we have spoken to. Chuck.
Well, it's important in some ways, the fact that we're finding it before Election Day.
Voxy, tonight at some point, do you want to do Idris Elba Africa movie,
Isn't that correct,
or
Morgan?
SpongeBob,
that is correct.
or Schenectady?
That's correct.
Or
so it's called a voter curing process. And New York is, North Carolina is one of the states that allows people to correct their ballots. But of course, they have to be notified by their county board that there was in fact a mistake, and they have to be able to correct it before the election, Chuck.
And it turns out sometimes we have to do the notifying. And it probably wasn't intended for us to be the notifiers. Anyway, Morgan Radford on the ground for us in North Carolina.
Good singer,
Our panel is back right after the break with what they'll be looking for when President Trump and Joe Biden face off.
NBC, I better be getting a cut.
But first, this debate moment from 2004 when John Kerry took George W. Bush to task over his response to the war on terror.
They look like the same person.
I thought my computer.
No. That's
He just said.
Oh my God, what's his name? He's in things. He's in mafia movies. He was in The Irishman.
Osama bin Laden attacked us. Al Qaeda.
He played Al Gore.
I'm asking you to make a donation before
I'm
the
lost.
September FEC deadline so that we can
old.
flip the Senate and beat Mitch McConnell.
Beat Mitch McConnell. 500,000. You can get that done on the black market for like what, 10K?
And Mitch McConnell
10 to 30?
has been right at the center of all of it. He has enabled Donald Trump's dangerous and reckless
in
agenda.
Minecraft.
He has packed our courts with unqualified right-wing judges, and he has bent over backwards to cover up Trump's impeachable offenses. Defeating Mitch McConnell's Republican majority has got to be among our
that little
top
boy is
priorities.
covering up that other picture
Please,
pretty hard.
Before this fundraising
not love her?
deadline, I'm
Does she
asking
not
you
love
to
him?
make a donation and get in the fight.
I don't know who's
flip
behind
the Senate.
because the little boy takes up all. No. I donated to Biden's campaign. I donated to Bernie's campaign. I have considered
You're not a dish.
donating to Trump's campaign.
You're a man. Most name brand bars and body washes you rub on your skin are classified by the FDA as synthetic.
A lot of times it's like, donate for a chance to meet Trump.
It's not even real soap.
So I think
Stop
about
marinating
it.
your
like,
man meat in unholy ingredients that are harmful to your
giving his
well-being,
campaign $1
body,
worth it?
and sperm.
I don't know.
Start treating your
Well,
body
to be
the
fair, you're giving
natural,
their
nourishing,
campaign, what,
lathery
$8
goodness of
because they
Dr.
match
Squatch
it?
soap. Get ready to step out of the shower feeling alive.
850% match.
That smells
It's usually
really
only
good.
700.
Like my guy's cologne.
So
it smells really good. Yeah, really sexy. Oh, that smells really good.
I would use it, but like if a guy smelled like that too, I'd be like, ugh.
If my man was wearing this, I would be all over him.
It's natural. It's kind of like being in a forest.
I would use this on myself.
Way better than like the regular store-bought soap.
I'm talking about natural, nourishing, cold-pressed,
Dr. Squatch
hand-cut
soap is
for
pretty
men.
dope. Use it. Try it.
The teachers are resilient?
Sorry?
Are you watching Dr. Squatch soap ads instead of the NBC ads?
No, I have a Dr. Squatch soap ad as mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
So go to drsquatch.com to feel, smell, and
why
shower
that guy
like
makes
this
me
every day.
uncomfortable.
Our soap is handmade
I feel
here
like
in
he's a nice
America
guy.
using a process that's been perfected
But
over
I don't
thousands
know.
of years.
This is the longest ad. Please, can it
Big
end?
soap cuts corners and
I
strips
already
out all the
buy-
sudsy goodness in
I
order to
already
make
buy your
production
product.
cheaper.
Your
First, I'm gonna have you
advertisement
read
worked.
our competitors.
Fuck
and just
off.
Go ahead and give that a shot.
Christ.
Hydrogenated tallow acid, pentaerythritol,
Pentasodium, pentatate.
Your poor balls. All dry, empty, and sad. But not Dr. Squatch. Now go ahead and read Dr. Squatch's all-natural ingredients and tell me what you think of those.
Pine tar extract, pine oil.
It's making me want to load up the
Rosemary,
Dr. Squatch
oatmeal,
website and order
sand,
some
and orange
chocolate
essential
milk
oil.
soap.
Sage, lavender,
Okay, it's
essential
over.
oils.
Sounds a little bit
Oh God! Oh fuck!
Use
My
a base
horny's
of
gone.
olive oil,
Skip it.
coconut oil, and shea.
Hey, don't mind me.
3.5 years, so he should be able to make me, I would think. He's much more experienced.
so dry
Give him
now.
a big shot of something, and he'll go out there.
He's Dr. Squatch.
He'll have a lot of energy. He'll have energy. He'll be like Superman for about 15
Why is he
minutes.
so wet?
I can't tell you what I'm going to do.
Why is he so plastic
He looks
looking?
like a glazed ham.
Steve's just asking what
Glazed ham!
Ham
I have
gang.
no idea. I think this whole thing, though, is debate prep. You know, what I do is debate prep every day. I'm taking questions
Every
from
day I
people
do
all the
debate
time.
prep. That's why you get
Oh,
dumpstered
thank God
every
Chuck
single
is here.
interview.
Coverage of the 2020
If
presidential
only
debates.
Chuck
We are now
was
just a
running
few
for
minutes away from the
president.
start of the first of
Oh, are you?
three scheduled
Don't tell me
showdowns.
you're.
That was the sound of
Not
what President Trump
Chuck.
has been gearing up for tonight. Here is Joe Biden.
Oh, there he is.
They look like a thick trench.
Jesus, Joe Biden looks fucking ancient. Oh no!
They uncovered him.
It's only because he doesn't spray paint.
Oh my God! I just realized what he looks like. Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, when the guy picks the wrong Holy Grail and drinks it and starts decaying. That's what Joe Biden looks like.
I wish Woody Harrelson would wheel him up to the stage. Or Woody Harrelson, fuck. The other one. The one who's not good in anything.
The point is that
Indiana Jones,
rather
Han
than say how we
Solo.
would do, again,
Harrison Ford.
Thank you, God.
Casey Hunt, Joshua Johnson, and Michael Beschloss are back to wrap
She
things
looks like
up.
she's making
Michael,
the face that
start with
makes
you. I
your
think
parents
we
say something
Who's
really
Michael
shorted
Beschloss?
in the last segment there with you. So take it from the Joe Biden and the challenger perspective here. We haven't had a challenger this far ahead against an incumbent president since Bill Clinton, though the Ross Perot thing sort of was part of it. And then I guess before that, you'd have to go back to Jimmy Carter.
Why are these
They just look like fucking aliens. The two in the middle, they were just sitting there,
I
unresponsive.
expect Joe Biden basically to treat
This is
Donald
weird.
Trump like
Just
a
staring
child
into
who's having a
nothing.
tantrum
So you know there's,
that he can't do very much about,
there's that
and let
delay,
people choose
like that
between
couple second
these two
delay,
figures. We're in a
because the
real
live
crisis
streams
tonight.
for
We're in a
them
crisis
talking
of
to each
democracy.
other.
We're in a crisis of a
I thought it was
pandemic that has
really
taken
funny. They had this one
200,000
guy on to
lives.
talk
The
about
Trump people are so worried about
legalizing
that
marijuana.
They reportedly asked the
And
moderator, Chris Wallace, not to mention that. Our economy
added
is
like
also in very
3
bad
seconds
shape.
to the delay.
Do people watching this
So it
tonight
was
think
like,
that they have the luxury
why do you think we should
of choosing a
legalize
next
marijuana? And it
president
was
who
like
is not up to
6
doing
seconds.
this
It was
job?
like,
The other
what?
thing, Chuck, is we will see things tonight probably that we've never seen before. But historically, incumbent presidents usually
Wait, why is there
lose a first
1.1
debate.
thousand dislikes on this
Of
video?
Carter, Reagan, the two Bushes, even Obama, who was known for being this great orator. So the odds are probably against Donald Trump being able to use this to his own advantage.
I mean, really, the
Casey,
debates don't change polling
I have to say, one of the
like 1 or 2 points
developments that I'm most surprised about is that there is no new virus relief. And we're at the first presidential debate.
Yeah, so am I, dude. Give me
to
my
say it
money.
might not happen before Election Day,
bro.
And I know this is your beat.
The Democrats last night.
It's still stunning to me. We are entering tonight
another bill that does
with
a second wave of stimulus
about whether the federal government is going to help
the $600 unemployment
bail a lot of people out on this virus.
They released that late last night.
Unknown, and we're just a day or so, 2 days away
if
from
Biden's prep has been good when they ask about COVID, he's
losing
like,
the help that's
we're still trying to help the
Walt
people.
Disney Company
yada,
just announced
yada,
they're laying off 28,000 people because we have failed to grapple with this virus.
And then
the numbers
starts raining.
are just stunning, and people are
because
really
he's
hurting,
actually an eldritch
god.
I feel like Biden, if he got rained on, his skin would like flake off like a croissant.
And that is ultimately Congress's responsibility.
If Biden was a Pokemon, he would be
I do think the talks today seem
Metapod.
to be more advanced, or at least
Metapod?
trending in a direction that is more positive.
If Biden was
that surprised a lot of us who, you know, have been reporting on this all the way along, that both sides are basically still $1 trillion apart from each other. But I think that reflects the fact that, you know, Democrats are coming under a lot of pressure to get something done here. Obviously, President
I'm more like
Trump
a
is running
Magikarp.
for re-election.
I just
but
splash
again,
around,
the closer
you know?
we get to Election Day, the harder it is for either side to make a deal with the other. I mean, I think the other question here is the economy really hurting so badly that there is absolutely no alternative? Right. I think we may be headed in that direction.
What is the economy?
Joshua Johnson, this has been the part of that I've just been head scratching about, is how this is being left in the air. And I think that this is the issue that both candidates will get punished on if they're not talking about virus relief, economic relief, and relief on the healthcare front. If they're not focused on it, because I think a lot of people actually are tuning in for some answers on this.
Well, the Democrats
proposed a bill last night. I think that COVID-19 is the issue that, you know, should dominate significantly the policy parts of this debate, because
it's a shame that COVID-19 is too old for both Biden and Trump.
Issue from COVID-19. As you just heard from Casey, it's all locked together. I mean, regarding those 28,000 Disney layoffs, the company says the reason it's laying those people off is because it doesn't have guidance on COVID-19.
They would have been on the plane.
I'm interested in hearing, in particular, is the section called race and violence in our cities, and the way that will be depicted.
Dude, I really,
obviously there's
God.
concern about violence that's been peripheral to Black Lives Matter protests. It's worth noting that in the early Black Lives Matter protests about Michael Brown's killing in Ferguson, Missouri,
for like, bruh. I think that Pete Buttigieg would curb stomp Trump here.
You're no longer participating in protected First Amendment protests.
Why'd they cut away from him for a second?
That is going to be interesting in terms of whether or not the candidates have a plan to deal with that.
It's
because whether or not these two old, wealthy white men are able to speak to a growingly diverse, youthful nation about the future of race and equity and diversity.
One thing I really hope
think
Trump,
Joe Biden might be able to excel at in this debate is that he projects empathy very well. And if the president doubles down on being puerile and insulting and harsh, Joe Biden might just be well served to let that pass and then look directly in the eyes of the American people and say, hey, forget about all that. I see you. I see what's going on, and here's what's happening tonight. That might change the calculus for who we consider the winner of the debate.
You fucked up.
But with Donald Trump in the White House, I think the calculus for who wins and loses these days
and he was like,
is kind of changing every day.
Because I messed up, dude. I didn't do a good job.
I do think it's a good point. I mean, certainly,
and it was like rare for me to see somebody like on a stage saying,
Michael
I messed up.
We're running short on time here. I want to give you the last word in terms of the sweep and history of this. You mentioned we are facing an unprecedented
Maybe Trump will get on stage and be like, yeah, it's time for universal health care.
Our country.
What if he gets on stage and he's just like, the next season of The Apprentice?
Everybody buy
Trump come up
steaks.
with a national plan
as he
to deal with it. People are suffering in this economy in a way that is different from any time ever before.
I don't.
And the other thing, if I might say, Casey,
I fuck with some Chris
I don't know
Wallace,
whose idea it was to put the words race and violence in the cities
he doesn't ask
in the same sentence as an issue to be discussed tonight. But I think that never should be allowed because those are two subjects that should not be linked, and it's almost making an editorial.
Because he's counting his brain cells.
No, I think that's a fair point, and certainly there was some criticism of
hair
that.
Is way too
the reality here is
I don't know
that
what's
race,
going on with the lighting
has
there,
been
but dude,
something that we as a nation
fake.
have been grappling with in such from the very founding documents of our country.
Right.
So. I do think
QAnon be like, she's already dead. It's a puppet.
Good point. I mean, so much on the line here. I was just reading through Michael Bachelor, through the Atlantic story today about
QAnon
what
guy
could be
lives
on the
on a
line
pig
here
farm.
Tonight in terms of how this election ultimately ends.
Nice.
Joshua Johnson, Michael Beschloss, thank you both so much. Thanks so much for being with us this hour. NBC News coverage of the first 2020 presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
is known for really good stuff.
News, the presidential debate.
Them and 4chan. For now and for their good take.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to
that guy's voice scares the fuck out of me.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden face to face.
The weird thing for me, it feels
day,
disconnected.
Just 35 days away, and voting already underway.
I'd like to say somebody else is in the back dubbing him.
States.
And the stage is set. It's in Cleveland, Ohio.
Because he's speaking in fucking eldritch tongues.
Reserve University in the Cleveland
Those
Clinic.
chairs
The
are not
moderator
6 feet apart.
is Fox News anchor Chris Wallace, and the stage.
Jokes on you. Everyone in the crowd already has COVID.
Wallace. He's gonna. Of the country on the line tonight, Lester.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of ground to cover, Savannah. Over
What
the
if he
next
just pulls out a gun?
Records,
There's a lot of ground to
Trump's
cover,
tax
Savannah.
Returns, the Supreme Court vacancy, the pandemic, the economy, racism,
I don't
and
have
civil
my shit
unrest,
through
and
voice
the
mod.
integrity of the election itself.
We may need a little longer than an hour and a half, but the debate commission has set the rules, has determined, by the way, that the moderator is not responsible for fact-checking the candidates tonight. But our team is standing by to do just that and to offer expert insight and analysis. And for live fact-checking during the debate, you can go to NBCnews.com. So let's get started. We'll go first
I think
to
the moderator should be allowed to fact-check to some amount.
Debate hall. Hallie, what do you think?
Yeah, because I think it adds to the debate. Just telling them that they're wrong.
Two very different candidates and two very different kinds of debate prep that has been happening. Sources
you
close
could just,
to President Trump, for example, say he's really been doing more informal Q&As with his top advisors. On the Biden side, people familiar with his planning say the focus this week has gotten more intense as he has done issue by issue practice sessions, essentially. When you talk about topics, watch for President Trump to try to turn this race into less of a referendum and more of a choice. He will likely go on attack.
What if they send out Trump Jr. in a face mask, like a big leathery skin bag on his head?
On the other side, Joe Biden will focus on the pandemic.
You're
he
not
wants
wrong.
to keep the focus on that.
And
you won't see a lot of live
cool.
fact-checking from him unless something is particularly egregious.
What state? I know Kanye got on the ballot.
All right, also with us is NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd.
The state of emergency.
The
state of emergency.
Well, I'll tell you, it's an unusual situation when the front runner is the challenger.
The liquid state.
And the person
that guy's name is legitimately Chuck Todd.
Donald
Dude, have
Trump
you seen
here.
Chad
I'm
Wolf?
curious to see, does President Trump,
okay.
He's been telegraphing that he's going to get personal and
seen
basically
Dick
do
Wolf.
whatever it takes to shake up Joe Biden.
Dude,
but does he actually tell voters what he wants to do for a second term? It's something he hasn't done. For Joe Biden,
is Joe Biden stutter and fuck something up?
Is he able to
Trump make fun of him for doing that and then get like impaled?
We're about 30 seconds away. Senior Washington correspondent Andrea Mitchell is there. The moderator is in place. This race has been remarkably stable, but a debate always has the opportunity to upend
Trump
things,
is
Andrea.
Having troubles with the older voters right now?
Yes, he is. Biden has the old vote by a pretty large margin.
Since George Herbert Walker Bush in '92 against Bill Clinton, but that was a three-way race with Ross Perot. Still, he's got a lot.
I think the way that it was measured, older being like I think it was like 70, 75 plus, something like that.
Of course, we have to see how he performs tonight.
Elderly, yeah.
All right, Andrea, thanks. And with the
their
debate
age.
about to begin, we want to go to Cleveland and moderator Chris Wallace.
People in their dating bracket.
Chris Wallace looks hungry.
Oh,
he's ready.
He's making me hungry. Oh, he looks so happy.
What is he doing? Oh, yeah.
What if he just gets
from the health education campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic? I'm Chris Wallace.
He's signing for help. There's someone with a fucking 12 gauge right behind him.
No, they're under the desk.
Between President Donald J. Trump
They're just pointing it at him.
Vice President Joe Biden.
There's a fucking claymore.
The Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format.
He's timing it with he's timing it with all of his syllables.
2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question.
Don't look at his eyes. I wouldn't have noticed that if you didn't point it out.
Of each segment.
I'm just going to look at his little...
have agreed to these rules.
Open discussion.
For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the two candidates.
This is going to be rough for both of them.
This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates.
My dad's watching this downstairs. I cannot wait.
Get him in the watch party.
No. Shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent.
Or no, let's do
cheers,
fun name.
no boos or other interruptions, so we and
what
more
do they call that
importantly
gross
you
thing they have
can
at,
focus on what the candidates have to say.
Bad Taco Bell.
No noise.
Oh my God, they come in
right
like
now,
a dish.
As we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
All right, so we're gonna call your dad Olay now. I feel like that's a good thing.
What the fuck?
Just be like, Mr. Olay, sir.
What is
Trump in the watch party?
What did Biden do?
He's got the energy. I think both of them are gonna get fucked here. I predict Trump to do better though.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court.
Fuck that bitch.
President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way,
I hate how he's repeating himself like usual.
Some of our biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time. Even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her, and very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you.
But they didn't have the right in 2016.
Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Drip.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. True. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are
He just shook his head when Biden stuttered.
Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They're able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man did.
Oh, he's doing a good job.
And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
All right. There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly,
he had to double back.
At some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president
elected during
that period of time. We have an opening.
I bet Chris
I'm not
Wallace
elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very happy with.
That's simply not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said, and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party
a lie.
Doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to dominate
party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what
I'm getting chills. Holy shit.
What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me about this.
I'm happy to talk about
And if you were here, it wouldn't be 200. It would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
gentlemen,
Europe, which was heavily infected. You would have been much later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President.
You're talking about 2 million people.
Also,
You're not
Biden didn't say he didn't want to ban China.
We were going to talk about COVID
he
in the
just
next
said
segment,
it wasn't enough. Choosing to only ban China was xenophobic.
The president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already begun.
You don't know it's on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
why is it on the ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court.
Dude, Biden came strapped. Holy shit.
Her view on
Get the
Roe
strap.
v. Wade.
I don't know
her view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack.
Chris Wallace,
we got a lot of time. So, on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask a question, sir.
Oh, fun fact, I'm actually covered under the ACA.
The last 4 years, you have promised
They're the only reason I have health
and
insurance.
replace Obamacare,
I
but
can't
you
afford
have never in these
$400
4
a month.
years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace
I make $800
Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual mandate.
I'm going to give you an opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate.
Excuse me, moderator. Shut the fuck up. I'm talking.
Absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare. Chris, that was the worst part of Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe.
Jesus, holy fuck, the disrespect!
I got rid of it. And we will protect people. President, I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your question. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is
Biden's
the
over there like,
plan?
Get him.
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care. All of the things that we've done, insulin. I give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost. I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs, what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say, this is open discussion.
No,
let
but
me
this
ask
is
you about,
big, this is big stuff.
Sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the Vice President, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare. And the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that is going to end private insurance.
What the fuck?
And well, if I can ask you the question, it will end.
What your party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would. Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be.
This motherfucker has dementia. Someone wheel him into a nursing home.
You agreed with Bernie Sanders, who's far left, on the manifesto, we call it, and that gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
are you saying
I'm
you
not going to
didn't
listen
agree?
to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Man.
I'm here standing facing you.
Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every
burn-in on the other Democrat.
I'm very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to make sure, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
Oh my God, he's throwing so many more punches than I thought he fucking would.
I want to make sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has, you picked the wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed.
Dude, I am the Democratic Party is trending on Twitter.
There is no manifesto.
I am the one who knocks.
Number two. You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan.
Do you have any idea what this clown is doing?
Socialized medicine.
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what. He
Trump's
is
mad
not
that he looks like a
for
glazed
any
ham. Okay,
help
that's
for
it.
people needing health care.
You know what makes me so angry?
Because he, in fact,
So I'm going to go downstairs after this, and my dad's going to be like, Trump destroyed Biden.
That they had from employers because
Trump
of
has
his
the opportunity to come back.
Number two,
but so far, this is insane.
I
thought Trump was going to do way better.
That he wants to take it away.
Shocked.
He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give
Number
you better
three.
health care at a much lower price because
by the way, he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to do it.
But you haven't made a plan to do it in 4 years.
He has never done a single thing.
As you might know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time,
and it's too expensive.
Let the president go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate,
which
we guaranteed
the
pre-existing
program.
conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is, and that destroyed They shouldn't even call it Obamacare.
They actually
then I had a
don't call it
choice to make. Do I
Obamacare.
let my people run it
They didn't.
really
It was
well
called the Affordable Care
or
Act.
badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people.
He's not the smartest
I said,
man.
you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive. Premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. Chris, we want to get rid of it.
I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time. Please let the vice president talk.
Good. He has no plan for health care.
True.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none.
He has.
Like almost everything else he talks about.
True.
He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right. I have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how
he's not answering the question.
Vote now.
You're going to pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
you're a
to answer the
senator.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
wouldn't you answer that question?
the question is the question is
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
All right, gentlemen, I think
that's what Voxy wanted. He missed it.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States and more than 200,000 people.
This is literally
even after we
testing's
produce
good.
a vaccine. Experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States.
Good luck.
We have
Foxy
5%, 4% of
No, I heard it.
population,
Man. I heard
20%
it.
of the deaths.
You heard the stop yapping, man.
40,000 people a day
Yeah, I heard the shut up,
contracting
man.
COVID.
I put my speakers on.
Yapping, man.
About between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging.
Oh, no.
Oh, shit.
What did he do? He went and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
Wrong.
I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months.
What's the over-under on
By my
Trump
doing it early. In
Chris
fact, Dr. Fauci said President Trump saved
100%.
thousands of lives.
Okay.
Many of your
I'm
Democrat
expecting a tweet
governors
within
said
30 minutes of the
President
written
Trump did a
amendment.
phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made the ventilators. Now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
there was no recession.
You made a point. Let him answer it.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding the phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people. Far more people. You would have been.
And by the way, his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine. We're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
Johnson, Pfizer?
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on one of the two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words. Yeah. But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them left, I don't know what I call them. So you're suggesting that the head
of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slaoui?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
he said, it's a possibility
that we'll
have
fact check him,
the
Chris
answer
Wallace. We know he's an idiot.
November 1st. It could also be after
when
that.
It's generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This is
delivering
the same man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away.
True.
By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically, and you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine.
Hasn't he made like three different excuses for that line?
Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year, but the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight.
I bet
your running mate, Senator
feels
Harris,
good
goes
to
further,
spoon.
saying the public health experts, quote,
No, he feels
will be muzzled, will be
croissant.
suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No
Another
more
one
than the
dead to
question you
COVID.
just asked him.
God
You
damn
pointed
it.
out. He puts
got an empty
pressure
chair at the
and
dinner
disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you
Everybody
can't.
does.
Senator
And-
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the scientists.
No. You can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can trust.
She said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be
Yes.
suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists. There's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by the way,
I spoke to the scientists that are in charge.
By the way,
they will have the vaccine very soon.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about?
He keeps
the
looking
whole
directly
issue
into the
relating to
camera,
COVID?
like he's trying to
He
talk
still
to-
hasn't even
That's like-
acknowledged that he knew this was
A lot
happening,
of this is
knew
really
how dangerous
smart.
it was going to be back in February, and he didn't
Whoever
even
prepped him did a
tell
killer
you.
job.
He's on record as saying it. He panicked, or he
It's
just
not
looked at
him.
the stock market. One of
It's
the two.
true.
Because guess what?
It's
a lot
Ivanka.
of people died. And a lot more are going to die unless he
She
gets
wants
a
him out
lot
of the
smarter,
office,
a
too.
lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if
We'll
you
see
would have
this.
had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
You see,
and it's
We're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to talking
When it
about
comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide
that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with him in the Senate. And he sits in his golf course. And well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd.
I want to move on to another subject. I want to move on to another subject.
But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
no, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are okay.
of
You have
masks?
to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking
what a piece of shit.
200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
I wear masks when I have to. This idiot is always wearing a mask whenever you see him. Got him.
We provided
What?
money. The Congress,
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
They've also said, well, look
serious
at Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the
He
opposite.
did not say the opposite.
He didn't say masks weren't effective. He said that you shouldn't be buying N95 masks because they were needed for
I want to ask you about
healthcare
one
workers and
last
first
subject
responders.
because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed.
Sometimes.
Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
What's true? Nobody shows up.
I heard somebody in the audience
In any case,
laugh.
why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
I've
not
done a
worried
great
about it
job
spreading
as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up.
Dude, we're
at
on the
airports.
first topic.
We
Did
use
you realize
airports.
that?
Are you not worried about
We
the
have a
disease
lot of
issues,
people.
sir?
Well, so
Well,
far
wasn't
we
Ruth-
have had no
there was the
problem
Supreme Court,
whatsoever.
wasn't it?
It's
Yeah,
outside.
that's the
That's a
topic.
big difference according
We're going
to
to go
the
to the
experts.
or no, we're on COVID.
And we do
This
them
is too.
outside.
We're on
We have
COVID. This is
tremendous
too.
crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 40,000 people at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally
Good for
irresponsible
you, buddy.
the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the
cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before.
And
he wants to close down. He will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country.
Wait a second.
And destroy
Divorce.
our country. Our country is
That's a
coming
weird
back
thing to touch
incredibly
on.
well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right, your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery.
I'm trying to imagine a K shape on a fucking graph, and I
Millionaires and
can't.
billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America,
I don't like the name Scranton. Shouldn't be a town.
This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just
the wrong state.
Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing.
He said the
1 in
border
6
wall was
is
a
now
national
gone.
emergency.
He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right, your time is up, sir. We are going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools, people want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it.
I brought back Big Ten football. Hell yeah, boy!
Gentlemen, I brought football back. Plans going forward in a moment, but first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax.
Oh,
each
here
of
it
those
is.
years.
And he paid nothing.
I know
for
that you
10
pay
to 15 of the
a lot
last
of
years.
other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax returns.
I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And I built a great
I'm asking you a specific question, which is...
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017.
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people.
Biden's
like every other
face,
private
dude.
person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes, on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him. He says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're the
way,
worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were
I
to
bet
be
he came up with that one in the mirror
focuses
this
a lot
morning.
on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes.
47 months, 47 years.
Be the best Pam you can be. New taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations.
Did he just say
President
dollars?
Trump says that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis done by Wall Street firms points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, federal, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened?
You got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr. President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you're on number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
Are you sure? I'm pretty sure Obama bailed out the automobile
industry. He totally gave up on manufacturing.
All right, let him.
Oh, he just said that.
I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan.
No, your facts, Trump. Biden and I prepped.
And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having
and they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals.
I'm just excited.
He talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
China ate your lunch, Joe. And
I don't
no
know.
wonder your son goes in and he takes out.
To be too biased because I don't think Trump's made a good point yet.
Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
You've asked a question, let him answer.
None of that is true.
Oh, really?
Totally,
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
he got $3.5 million.
The moderator's going to come up there and kick Trump in the goddamn throat.
It's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
It's an open discussion. No, it's a fact.
With no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who? The media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oth.
So let me ask you this.
I'm listening to you.
People
you got $3.5 million.
Put him on a leash.
He testified under oath, and his administration said, "I did my job, and I did it very well.
Oh, really?
I did it
I'd
honorably."
like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
Hey, let me just say to you.
No. I'm Mr. President.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply.
Why did he deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already...
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
And that's such a...
Mr. President.
Every single one of them lost a fortune.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family, the American people. He doesn't... That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
All right. That's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Well,
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
question. Try to be
honest.
He stood up. No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion.
Fighting a moderator, it doesn't matter. Trump could be the most correct person on earth. This is the worst optics you could possibly have in a public debate. It's arguing with the moderator.
So here's the deal.
It's one of the stupidest things you could possibly do.
6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting
that's
than
all right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less than
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on.
Holy fuck.
The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question to the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years?
Talk about how him and his dad got sued and lost to the federal government for discrimination in housing.
It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is whose
now, second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do?
Lafayette
he came out of his
Square,
bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, African Americans.
White kids are smart as
1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus.
Poor kids are just as smart as white kids.
If he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African-American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990s, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida,
I don't know if that's a thing
Texas,
to run on right now.
I have Ohio. I have, excuse me, Portland. The sheriff just came out today, and he said,
that's especially not
Trump. I don't think you have
good thing
any
to run on.
law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide,
this is a big question.
You said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call
they have to be fucking annihilated.
At the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place, and you say peaceful protest? No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like. What insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism.
One of the best things that Biden is doing, Trump has only been like attacking. Biden has been like, we're going to fix things. Positivity, happiness, a good future.
Ferguson, you look at,
and Trump has been like, fuck
many
you.
Places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
you
crime,
still haven't mentioned. Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law.
Violent crime has fallen since the 1990s.
You asked a question, let him finish.
and order. Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. Okay. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down
where people get treated fairly.
15% in our administration. All right. It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more than ours.
All right, we're now. Mr. President, you're going to. Mr. President,
every record in the book.
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in
that was
a couple
actually
of
a really
examples,
surprising
but if
choice,
you look
honestly.
at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago,
That's
where
why I was excited.
53 people were shot and 8 died shot.
Like he always
if you
throws
look at
good
New York,
questions.
where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like
he would know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not. I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore.
True.
Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. Yeah. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support. He has no law enforcement
support. That's not true.
Almost nothing. Look. Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
Think about it. Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way.
I have multiple scenes saying Biden looks dry, and they're making fun of Biden for looking dry.
A young man in the middle of the street, they shot him, and for 3 days,
and these are hardcore Trump
supporters. I interrupted the U.S. Marshals, they take care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the, but here's the point. The point is that that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary time.
And to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
You have repeatedly. You've been talking back and forth.
You made a statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir,
I would love to end it.
You know, if you want to switch seats,
we could very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd send in the National Guard. It would be over. There'd be no problem.
Yeah, if you want to
switch
seats.
The National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the Vice President for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared to specifically
do it?
Well,
I
go
would
ahead,
say,
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea,
condemn
not
white
an organization.
supremacists.
Not malicious.
Stand ready, stand by. What about this Antifa, though?
FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
He couldn't even say white supremacists are bad.
Can I tell you what?
You have no idea.
Condemn a group who? The Proud Boys.
Is a dangerous,
all right,
radical
gentlemen,
group.
we're now moving on to the
Stand
Trump and Biden
What?
records.
They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask a question.
When
the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill.
They
when
didn't.
you leave
Mitch
office,
McConnell
you don't leave any
blocked
judges.
those from
That's
being
like
filled.
you just don't do that.
Dumbass.
They left 128 openings.
Bring that up
And if
about
I were
Mitch
a member
McConnell.
of
Say
his
it, Biden.
party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president. You can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both of your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
Oh, my God.
And by the way,
he refuses to say anything about
Mr.
Putin.
President,
but
your campaign agreed to
Dog.
both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it.
They muted Trump.
Why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to
Holy
as a ground rule,
fuck.
okay, sir?
he never keeps his word. Can you add
No,
back
I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yes,
Okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent
Are you talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
Oh,
I'm
my
talking about my
God.
son, Bo Biden. You're talking about
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter
you know
got
Bo.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably
Yes,
discharged.
literally.
That's not true. It
For
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made
son,
a fortune.
my son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he
I'm proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All right.
of
But he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right.
tens of
He
millions
was
of
given
dollars.
tens
That is
of
totally.
millions of
That's
dollars.
totally.
Remember when George Bush had a cocaine addiction?
Yeah.
Christ, dude.
We've already been through this. I think the American people
God,
would rather hear
I think that's
about
a
more
strong.
substantial
Your son did
subjects.
cocaine.
Well, you know,
Well, he beat
as
it.
the
I'm
moderator,
proud
sir,
of
I'm
him.
going to make a
And a lot of people
judgment.
have drug problems
$3.5
out there.
million
Like,
from the
let's talk
mayor
about-
of Moscow.
Let's talk
That is
about-
not
I think
true.
it's a
That
terrible thing.
report is totally
Why did he get
discredited.
it?
I
Mitt
think-
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people.
Dude, it's the
When
pocket
state
squares.
officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you
it's giving
said,
him his
I don't
power.
think
It's
the
not even.
science
It's not even
knows.
fabric.
Over your
It's
4
three
years,
aces. He's got
you
the
have
fourth up
pulled
his
the U.S.
sleeve.
out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What
Like
do
the
you
Clean
know
Water
about
Act.
the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful
What?
clean air. We have now the lowest carbon.
I
If you look
want
at
cool,
our
clear
numbers
water.
right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of
No, we're not.
commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far
What?
as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder. and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management. Got to have cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting a billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
You believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contribute to the global warming of
that's a really weird point that he just made.
Yes, I think to an extent, yes, but I also
Billion
think
Tree
we
Project,
have to do better management
we lose
of our
12
forests.
billion trees a year.
I get the call. California's burning. California's burning.
Everyone was memeing on Mr. Beast for planting like 12 billion.
Management, good forest
because
management, you wouldn't be getting
so
those
bad.
calls. You know, in Europe, they have forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests.
They rake the forests.
I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of management.
But, sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars and trucks?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car. And you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple
You look
the
so
number of cars
disappointed.
purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored
but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And, and I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure
Oh, no, Trump bringing coal back.
Fleet and turn
what is he going to do now?
Run on their electric
I've never
vehicles,
seen a piece of coal in my life.
With 500,000 charging stations
and
all
clean
the
it.
highways that we're going to be building.
My favorite. That's my favorite Trump quote on
is going
clean
to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they in fact are weatherized in a way that in fact
it was said sarcastically
they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out.
When he said,
there's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating jobs.
I like
millions
that.
of good paying jobs.
I want a mixtape of him saying that on a bass drop.
Wage
hey, Trump hasn't cut in yet. I think he's going monkey brain.
Because he's got nothing to say.
I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More
people who are talking to me right now saying Biden is embarrassing himself. I genuinely wonder if they're watching
Instead
the same
of doing
debate.
something about that, I would be.
They just aren't hearing it. They're literally it's going in one ear out the other. That's why I fucking hate this stuff.
$20 billion. Stop.
I'm sure there's some untrue statements in there, but they're presented so well. He's
and if you
done
don't,
so
then you're going to
well.
have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. Right. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that. Well, the fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building. No, it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out.
I just want to make a whole video of Biden going, that is incorrect. That is wrong.
That's more money that our country could make.
13. I want to just make a mixtape.
Because I actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
He did say that. And here's the deal. You make up. We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now. Billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest.
Anyone who's saying Biden is doing bad
and wipe out entire
these type of
sections
things
and counties
is an
in
idiot.
Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem.
There are going to be a lot of good response
we, in fact,
gifts
but
of Trump's
the rest of the world, we got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way,
they're not industrialized, fully industrialized
the
countries.
Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green New
you want to rebuild every
is
building.
Not my plan.
I want to rebuild every building.
If he knew anything
he made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what
not
he
true.
did is he said
he
called the military stupid bastards.
I
did said it on tape.
This constantly happens every fucking subject.
I would never say that.
Play it.
Dude, I'm sick of him arguing with the fucking moderator. It's like, if you want to yell at Biden, call him dumb shit, fine, do it, good.
I can't remember which of all was
when the moderator says no.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Oh, you don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
that means you just the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment. Election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you
Please, Trump, please say it's rigged. Please say it's rigged.
plus weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also...
I know, I just hope he says it here so that his fucking supporters don't vote.
Day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President,
just say votes don't matter.
People vote. They should
Please.
Go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated.
I hope he mentions the ditch.
He said that. The
Trump.
fact is that
I hope
there
he
are going to
does.
be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate.
True.
Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote
Talk
in person.
to me, Biden.
Vote
Look into my
the best way
eyes,
for
baby.
you, because you will. He cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not, when the votes are counted and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose,
that's
that will be
big.
accepted. But by the way,
that's big.
If in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine.
Let's see if he'll commit to a peaceful transition of power here.
Is it going to change? You get 4 more years of these lies.
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign.
No.
They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense, and President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot. Okay,
please mention it.
Okay. You're soliciting. You're asking. They send it back. You send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump. Just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame.
How do you
and
know
can
they're
you imagine
losing?
where they
How do you know how many
you have to have your ballot in by November 10th.
Yeah.
November 10th.
If I send 10 ballots and you receive 7, how do you know if I sent 10 ballots or 8?
Should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by
2
Democrats.
minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump.
It's a rigged.
Shut the fuck up. Chris Wallace is like,
there he did. He said it. He said it. It's a rigged election. Don't vote.
That it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I don't think I hope we don't need them. in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so, because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
But what
they
are you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about
left
it? There are
right.
millions of ballots going out
what
right
you
now.
do
What
is
are
you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's okay,
I know
or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go and vote. You go and vote
but
like
what I'm saying is, what are you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited
Was he
ballot
about
where
to
you're
say the
sending it in, they're
old-fashioned
sending
day?
it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
There is no
This is
evidence
not
of that.
going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this, Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots, Senate and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been fraud.
Mail service delivers 185 million pieces of mail a day.
In 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law. 8 states from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the Vice President, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not
He's just not answering.
These people aren't equipped to handle it, number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had
this
the
was
name
actually
Trump
fake.
on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will
he
you
just mixed
urge
two
your
stories
supporters
together.
to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
I got nothing to say. I'm just sitting here and watching
here's the deal.
burn.
We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, They've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race in Manhattan.
You had an opportunity to respond.
Carolyn Monroe.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
Vice President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it. This is the end of this debate.
Honest ballot count.
We're going to leave it there.
End the debate with yelling at the moderator.
To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump.
Jesus Christ, what a fucking
it's been
baby.
An interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University.
It's going to be Wallace for all 3, right?
Hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on
Presidential
Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah.
Let's get Candace Owens next.
Nominees, Vice
I
President
don't.
Mike Pence
So
and
the
Senator
thing that
Kamala
worries
Harris
me is I
will
think
debate at 9 p.m.
Chris
Eastern
Wallace
that
is
night.
great
We hope you watch.
because
Until
he
then,
asks
thank
hard
you,
questions to
and good night.
everyone he talks to. Every single person, he finds like what
If
they are
hearing that this
insecure,
debate
what
is
people
over
would
was
be worried
music
about,
to
and he
your
asks them
ears,
about it.
you may not be alone. What
some
could have been
people
a
ask
low
really
point
softball
in American political
garbage, and I don't like
discourse,
that.
certainly in any modern debate we've seen, just took place over an hour and a half. If you showed up looking for a food fight, you got a brawl between these two men, language that we have rarely heard from candidates in a
I love the clown
debate.
usage twice.
Name calling that went to a new level. Frankly, Savannah Guthrie, I'm a bit of loss for words here to describe what we've just witnessed.
Well, maybe because I think, like so many in this country watching this, your jaw just dropped. You can't pretend that this was a normal debate, a normal example of American democracy at work, a normal, tussle between foes. This was different. This was an all-out grudge match. It was undignified at many times. It was cringeworthy at many times.
Cringeworthy.
And you just, as I turned to Chuck,
how dare you?
We can't pretend. I can't go to you, Chuck, with my normal give me some political analysis question, because I think we need to just pause for a moment
by the
and say
left-wing
that was
radical
crazy.
socialist communists.
It was a train wreck. But it was a train wreck of the making of one person. I mean, we know who did it. President Trump did this. And in some ways, it's the only way he knows what to do. He bulldozed over the moderator. He bulldozed over Chris Wallace. Bulldozed and at times flustered
Fake
Joe
news!
Biden, but I don't know if anybody wouldn't have been flustered by the president's behavior and the president's performance.
Well, I'm going to
it is.
Stop watching their coverage because I feel like I have a thing.
I cannot wait to hear my father
if you
praise Trump.
Guys, thank you. That was painful. Oh God. Have fun arguing with all your people. Peace.